So your first project was to do the pavilion logos.
Yes, and I started in '79, and the Epcot was opening in '82, so we only had 3 years basically to design and build this whole project. So everybody who got hired on, most all of us got hired on about the same time. We all sort of hit the ground running. And one of the first projects was they wanted to come up with logos for all of the pavilions. And what was it, World of Motion?
Yeah, World of Motion.
Was up first, so that we would start working on the logo. And I think none of us, including John Hench and Marty Scalar, who were the head of the design group, had any idea what we were going to do with it. So I remember the first several phases we went through for the design of the logo. They had, I think it was called 80s conference room, I believe. Anyway, I kind of wallpapered the wall with hundreds of just different ideas, so anything from like chicken scratching to, I don't know, I remember lightning bolts and wagon wheels, trying to depict graphically some kind of a world of motion, I guess. Because I had no idea, and I think at that time they probably didn't have any idea what. But as we went through the process, it finally, basically came down to where they wanted a graphic image that would tell a story, and yet just be a symbol. So anyway, we went through it, and this is what we finally came up with for transportation.
Yeah. So this, I think the brilliance of all these logos are the simplicity and the fact that you can read these in a second and a half and know exactly what's going on. So this looks like a sphere, and you can see like wind resistance working against it. So it's, to me, that to be able to capture the idea of motion in just one simple graphic like that blows my mind. This one is Spaceship Earth.
And that was actually one of the last ones. I think that at one point, because Spaceship Earth was such an iconic building, that there was some thought that maybe it didn't need a logo at all. And so that was like one of the, in fact, it was probably the last one, except the Epcot logo was actually the very last one we did. But we finally decided that since they all had one, that they needed one too.
I love this thing, the Earth obviously hurtling through space, and again, to just be able to boil that down to one graphic just blows my mind. The land.
Land again was, it's just a way to depict land.
Yeah. Yeah, and the plant with the biospheres that they had in the back, just like, again, brilliant, simple. Horizons.
Vision into the horizon, or a road or a path.
Yeah. Now here's the one that I think we're going to bust a myth today.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody assumed this was a camera iris because of Kodak, but in fact,
this was probably in retrospect, was probably the most difficult and probably the least successful of all logos, because it was meant to be a vortex. It was supposed to look like it was spinning into wherever space. I think if I had to do it over again, I'd add more perspective to it, because I think that because Kodak was the sponsor, everybody assumed it was the iris of a camera, but it wasn't.
Communicore, and I love, there's a hidden thing in here that never occurred to me until Norm told me, and I was like, oh, I never see that.
Originally, the Communicore, this actually is kind of the basic plan of the building, and also was a C and a reverse C Communicore.
See? Like never, it's been there all this time, and I figured it out. And once you know it, it seems so obvious. There's so many good ones. This is one of my favorites.
Energy was actually, because of the building itself, as you recall, it had solar panels, which at that time was a relatively new thing. And obviously it was energy developed from the sun, so the sun was the obvious choice to make a logo out of.
And then this was kind of the late guy, Living Seas.
Seas was pretty one of the easy ones.
So all of these logos were then used throughout the parks on wayfinding systems and signs within them. And the applications that you did for them were all very different and very unique. Like the signs in World of Motion were recessed with like a reflected coating behind it, so there was some dimension to that. That one on the land, it probably, I don't know if anyone remembers, it was about 12 or 14 feet high and made out of wood, like dimensional and attached to the wall and then backlit. So the way that these logos were utilized throughout the parks were just phenomenal. And I do want to mention one thing real quick because Deborah Lord's World Bold, I think, was a huge part of the design system. And as I was talking to Norm, I found out there was actually kind of a shootout amongst the designers in WED to come up with a font for Epcot.
Yeah, we all decided because Epcot was special, we wanted to have its own special typeface as well. So there was a number of us, Debbie and myself and a couple other people, we all made an attempt to come up with an alphabet for Epcot. And Debbie's was chosen, which she did a great job. And we used it for all of the signage in Future World. And what we did is we released the font to a couple of type houses locally, and we were able to get all of our type from them, and it was exclusive to those. We heard later there was people who were trying to specify, but it wasn't allowed.
Such good stuff. So once all of those logos were done, as Norm said, then it was time to kind of turn attention to the main Epcot logo. And before his arrival, there were some attempts as Epcot kind of developed. So it started out as just World Showcase and then Future World. They were two separate areas. And then famously, the models were kind of shoved together. But there's a story that he told me about this version of the logo and Card Walker not being a humongous fan of it.
Yeah, the particular Epcot Center logo type was, and the logo actually, that had all existed before I arrived. I think it was all done actually here in Florida, I think. I don't know, but anyway, it existed. He didn't like it at all. He eliminated the D with the character in it, but I think, I'm not sure, and I'm probably wrong, but I think Walt was using the Epcot logos during his presentation on his Sunday night shows, I think, but I'm not sure. I know it did exist before I arrived.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of like D-style things that are in I think there was even a Disney magazine from the 60s that kind of used that. So I think I heard you said it looked like a stop sign. So Norm started on the process of working out what exactly could this new Epcot logo be, and this was something that was on your drawing board, and I thought this was fascinating because it's starting to see the prototype of the idea here of like how you can combine, what is Epcot? It was Disney and business and nations kind of put together, and that evolved into more of what we know today, and with a little extra, it turned into the logo that we're all familiar with. But what I didn't realize is that there was a reason behind all of the rings.
Yeah, when I designed it, I came up with the idea of the 5 rings representing 5 different things that came together and formed Epcot Center. But Marty Sklar didn't like it. It was too technical explanation. So I've seen it and read it many times, but he came, there it is.
There we go.
He came up with the description as it was an Epcot flower, and it was much more romantic than mine.
But still, I think as a designer, it's like we always talk about design is problem solving. It's not just, it's not fine artistic. So the thought process behind it, I think, is really key for people to understand like why that logo exists. Because now you actually know the secret of like why are there 5 rings, and the fact that each of them represents something to me shows you the thought that this gentleman has put behind everything that he's done, and like how that impacts the final piece. And that logo really became synonymous with the park. It was utilized all over merchandise. I mean, that was, to me, one of the biggest things. The fact that you buy t-shirts and earrings and tie clips and everything with that logo on it. And then over the course of time, it's even been beloved by fans. Like, people are tattooing themselves with your logos, Norm. For real. Like, people are making this art. Now, here comes our super secret. So you were working on a project with John Hench, and you were in his office, and you kind of made an offhanded comment about Spaceship Earth and how you felt like there was something sort of missing.
Yeah, well, I was presenting, I think, some operational graphics for the main entrance to Epcot Center, and John almost offhandedly said, we need something at the entrance of Epcot Center, because the building itself is so huge, you admire it well from a distance, but when you're up close, it's so gigantic, you never can see the whole thing at once. So we need to have something that's more of a human scale, something of a human scale at the entrance. And so, again, it was almost an offhand comment, but he said he thought we need some kind of a graphic or something at the front entrance. So I started working on at first some signage and directional signage and some just graphic elements, but none of that made any sense. And then I thought, well, how about a fountain? Because there was a fountain. They're talking about a fountain. I thought it has to be more than a fountain. We have to do something with the fountain. So I came up with the idea. At the original one, they had 9 pylons, and they were going to be crystal glass, and each, the 8 of them represented the 8 opening day pavilions, and the single one in the middle of the Epcot Center one. But as it turned out, the glass was too expensive, also too heavy, and it was just way too expensive to do. So then I sort of boiled it down to the 3 remaining and changed it to acrylic, which look a lot like glass. And they bought off on that, and it sort of became the icon at the entrance. And I was told that at one point that it might have been the most photographed place in all of Epcot, because everybody needed a picture of it going in and coming out of Epcot Center.
Yeah, and there's in the model, that's a close-up of the Epcot model, and there is the version with the 9 pylons on the left. So you can see the different colors there of the different pavilion logos with the main Epcot. So you gotta squint because it's up, but that's the one. And it sort of became a symbol even within Imagineering of the achievement of Epcot Center too. This was a poster that was put out internally. And
it was kind of an in-house joke, but they used to. This was even before the fountain came. They used to talk about the Spaceship Earth as the golf ball. So the fountain became the tee.
Oh, that's so good. So there's Card Walker with the fountain, and he's got something there. And Norm kind of surprised me with the story of a plane trip with this thing. So
we were going to for the dedication of the opening of Epcot Center. Card Walker was on the podium, and he was going to read this description of the dedication of the Epcot Center, but the plaque had not been finished yet. So since we were going, when we finally had it finished, they said, take it with you. So I had it in the seat next to me on the plane flying into Florida. And we got it there the night before opening, so that Card had it on his podium to read the next morning.
And so that's why that version of we'll find out, that version of the plaque is in the archives now. The plaque was eventually set into acrylic, much like the pylons, and you told me that there was a problem with brass, right?
Yeah, you couldn't integrate it with the acrylic because of expansion and contraction. When they heated it up, they would because the brass expand different than the acrylic, it would crack it. So instead of doing that, they embedded it, but it didn't, with the Florida weather, it just didn't last. I think that thing lasted maybe a year, then they took it down.
So cool. So besides the graphics for the pavilion, Norm also worked on a number of posters, and including this one, which one of the most iconic things. This was a teaser, right?
This was like a preview poster of a coming attraction of Epcot Center, and it was just kind of just to try to do something mysterious, I guess, and using Spaceship Earth as the object, I guess. And I didn't illustrate it. There was an illustrator named Ren Wicks. I did the design work, but he actually did the illustration. And it got, the image itself got used many times for different things, but the original poster was just this introduction, coming attraction of Epcot Center.
And so it got reused for a poster for Spaceship Earth. One of the few posters that was actually in the park when it opened up. I think this and Impressions de France got one, but there were very few attraction posters at Epcot, unlike Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom. So it was used there. And then Norm also did a number of other posters for Epcot as well.
I did very little work in World Showcase, but the World Showcase in the Japan, China, and Mexico pavilion, they had museums. So for the various museum shows, I produced posters and catalogs, and these were a few from, I think, China and Japan.
Yeah, this one, I remember this particular exhibit vividly in the mid-1980s. Just this gorgeous exhibit with fighting kites and all kinds of different kites from Japan. I was a teenager who was walking through mesmerized by that stuff. And then one other thing that you actually did get to work on for Tokyo Disneyland was a poster for Magic Journeys when it came to Tokyo.
Yeah, it's hard to see from this image, but it was a 3D movie, and there was a scene in there where they're flying a kite on the beach, and you get the kite itself appeared to come out of the screen, so the poster, the kite itself is actually three-dimensional it's not part of the poster, it's a separate piece. Difficult to tell there, but that's what that was.
Yeah, so, such a neat solution. That poster did eventually get partially reused. They took the good stuff for the Disneyland version, and when they moved it to Fantasyland and the Magic Kingdom here in Florida, and then they added a bunch of other stuff on top of it to make it much less good, I think. But be that as it may, Norm did the good part. And then in the mid-1980s, as the Eisner regime took over, there was an ask to sort of redesign all of the corporate identity for Disney. And that went through literally every division. So Norm got to work on the work for Web as it transformed.
Yeah, actually, I think Michael Eisner and Frank Wells came to Disney after Epcot Center. One of the first things Michael wanted to do was to create a corporate identity for the entire company. And he wanted each of the division to have some representation by Mickey. And I happened to be working, in fact, I had finished the new design for the WED logo. And we were getting ready to change over all our stationery and things. But then when Michael showed up, he wanted to redo the whole thing. So then I transitioned into he changed the name from WED Enterprises to Walt Disney Imagineering. That's where that change happened. And so I came up with the idea of using the sorcerer from Fantasia, because WED at the time was always known as the sort of mysterious division of Disney that created all the magic for the parks. So I think it was natural for him to be the representative for us. And I made him into a magician with the wand, and above his head there's pixie dust and stars. And if you see, there's 1/6 single four-pointed star. That was sort of my homage to the old WED logo, which had the four-pointed star in the middle of D. It since has changed. They've changed the WED logo.
Yeah.
WDI logo.
What's interesting though, I was looking at, so they just rebranded again, I think last year, and I noticed there's a bunch of stars on it, and they're all four-pointed stars, so.
I don't think anybody knew that, right? I think I told it to Marty, and he thought, oh, that's a great idea, because it's just, some little leftover from the old logo.
So time marched on, and Epcot changed into the 90s. Maybe not as good as it was before, but as we saw a couple of years ago at D23, New Hope was reborn, and we saw Norm's logos being brought back with new ones for the new pavilions. And in fact, yesterday, 2 days ago, they opened up the Connections Cafe at Epcot, and his logo is all over the place in there, embedded in glass and in the walls. So it's like the earth is healing, things are and even the mountains So it took, 40 some odd years, but it all came around again.
It's just everything that's old becomes new again.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Norm Inouye.